It's pizza time, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And BlueDragonFive.
And SandyClaws.
And Jacob Wile, too.
And welcome to our long overdue retrospective podcast on Spider-Man 2. No, not the amazing Spider-Man 2, not Spider-Man Far From Home, not even the anticipated sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's the original Spider-Man 2. And dare I say, folks, the original, as Roger Ebert himself put it back in the day, greatest superhero movie of all time. This is going to be, I'm going to kind of lay this into my thesis. My thesis is going to be very short and sweet. Does this hold up as the greatest superhero movie of all time? It's not the greatest, but it's a greatest. Like it's in that tier. It's in that tier still. Like, this is a hell of a movie, guys. I love the crap out of this movie. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care if people are like, well, it's aged poorly and it's the whole thing's a meme. I'm like, yeah, the whole thing's a meme, and that's kind of what makes it all the more entertaining.
Yeah, so is Toy Story. Yeah. Who has a problem with that?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I am Mrs. Nesbit.
In terms of my nostalgia here, guys, go ahead, Jacob. I'm sorry.
I am Dr. Octopus.
You see the arms? You see how many arms?
And they each have a teacup.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. In terms of nostalgia, I don't have much on this movie. The only thing I remember is I remember seeing set photos in magazines and being like, oh, wow, that's really quick. And hey, it's coming out next year. Like, I remember this being a really quick, very efficient turnaround for a sequel. You know, the fact that it was 2 years. I vividly remember, do you guys remember the solo Doc Ock poster that it was the first glimpse we got of Doc Ock?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They used that image for a lot of, promotional images, and I think they even used that in, one of the discs.
Right. So I definitely remember that. I was stoked for this movie. I really was. It was kind of like a big event. It was like a big, this was like the height of Spider-Man's powers, if you will, even though he's losing his powers in the movie. So it's kind of a mixed metaphor, but, and also the last thing on my nostalgia is, I definitely watched this movie back to back on opening day. I believe I had a 1 o'clock screening and then a 3:30 screening or something like that.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah, I watched it by myself and then I watched it with my dad when he got off work.
Nice.
Yeah, I did the same thing with Revenge of the Sith, except Revenge of the Sith, I went to a midnight screening unexpectedly, and then I had tickets to go on that Friday, so I was like, all right, of course, Spider-Man 2 was much more satisfying. Literally, Spider-Man 2, I started life in my movie watching experience with this movie. Marathon it. All right. Who wants to go next?
Well, mine is pretty short. I don't remember seeing too many promotional stuff for this movie because I'm not sure how old was I. I don't know. I was pretty young when this came out, but I must have seen something around that time. I've always loved Spider-Man, especially around this 2004 time frame. I was all into Spider-Man. I loved it. When I actually got around to seeing this movie, I was very, very entertained. I remember being very entertained. I wasn't as entranced by this one as I was the first one, just because it's from a little kid perspective, I guess. I like the Green Goblin more than Doc Ock. But I absolutely nowadays, man, I love this movie. Like you said, Tiki, this is up there with, all those other great superhero movies. I'm gonna choose my words wisely here, and that's what I say, but it's right up there.
All right.
Should I go next then?
Maybe I should actually. Let me. Okay, so Spider-Man 2. So nostalgically, I it's less the first watch; it's more the rewatches that I have an attachment to for this movie. It's not that I had a bad first watch or anything. It's just I don't know why. It's just every subsequent rewatch, really kind of stuck with me a little bit more. In that, for the first rewatch, again, I emphasize rewatch because I'm pretty sure it wasn't the first watch. The first rewatch was, it was a rough day to say the least. I don't want to go too into it. I was just kind of going through a rough time at that point. So it's always Spider-Man 2 was kind of a bright spot amongst that time frame. But what I really remember Spider-Man 2 for were, in that rewatch were the DVD bonus features. Oh my goodness! I mean, it's kind of like a Pixar caliber of the day sort of thing. I mean,
yeah.
I love the Spider-Man the 21st Century documentary on the first Spider-Man movie. That's great, but I mean, 2 blew it out of the water. 2 was kind of like, it showed you the process of filmmaking. It was kind of a live action equivalent to like a Monsters Inc. or something. It would show you like the steps and making of, and just a lot of like how they brought Doc Ock to life. A lot of really cool stuff. A lot of really riveting stuff. Anyway, I do remember the marketing. Pretty sure it was a Pizza Hut tie, and I assume it's pizza because I know now they're still doing Pizza Hut with the Spider-Man marketing, so I'm assuming maybe it's been a long-standing thing. It might have been Domino's, points like some pizza tie-in for obviously the Joe's Pizza of it all. I remember I had my art class way back when in the room there were Spider-Man posters for the movies. I believe they're both were in there. Like I believe the 9/11 poster was in there, but I remember distinctly the poster where you had Doc Ock reflected in Spider-Man's eyes. It was really just a remarkable image. So basically, in regards to marketing, that's my main tie to it.
I'm sorry, really quick with nostalgia, we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up the video game.
I thought
that was gonna be
what?
Yeah, way to bury the
That was one of the things that I was gonna mention.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
All right, anyway, so thesis. So for me, with the thesis is to keep it direct here is that Spider-Man 2 is everything you want a sequel and a blockbuster sequel to be. It's we spoke of how the original Spider-Man was kind of the Superman for our generation. Then it's a little obvious, but fact of the matter is, there's no better comparison. It's the Superman 2 for our generation. Donner cut notwithstanding. Donner cut.
Well, I think it's a way better film than Superman 2.
That's the thing. It's a way better film. I'm just saying in terms of where I'm going with it. I'd say there are even a few. Obviously, Superman 2 has far more imperfection. This thing has maybe kind of a ding or two. I mean, it's like I can't quite say it's like it's maybe as good as the Donner cut. I can't say it's better than the Donner cut.
You could say it's the Terminator 2, the original Terminator. It's even better than the first.
I would say that's a better comparison, yeah, because the original Terminator is still a great film, and the original Superman is still a great film too. But
all right, the point being, just with the
aliens or aliens to Alien.
Yes, sure, but I'm just saying with the whole Superman kind of parallel of it all, I think just again, it's modeled after Superman 2. I think it does kind of really fit in there. Anyway, point being. So Spider-Man 1, that's the how. That's like how Spider-Man got his powers. That's how the origin went down. Spider-Man 2 tackles the why. Like why is Spider-Man Spider-Man? And while it's doing that, it's like why do we care about this character? Like what is so special about him? It's all about the why. And Spider-Man. What's so great about this too is that this is adapting one of the best Spider-Man stories. I think a lot of our favorites here with Spider-Man No More. And of course, by the way, a little fun fact: Spider-Man No More at the very end of that issue, they introduced the Kingpin. So very kind of a dual, kind of important story there.
You didn't have the bag. I'm just in the middle of a show right now, Ramos.
Anyway, so so of course the film has a visually memorable flow. It's kind of with the Raimi stamp of depth around. Applied to both your character as well as your villain. It's not perfect, but you can count the flaws of this film on less than one hand. I mean, less than a Doc Ock arm even. It's like that's the many flaws you can legitimate flaws you can count on this movie. It's darn near perfect. It was the best we had when the first movie changed the game. Again, think about this. Just to attribute this is within the Spider-Man franchise. First movie changes the game, and this is still before the MCU really enters the fray. Before Batman Begins and everything on the DC side of things, and Spider-Man 2 re-changes the whole game and just like elevates things. It did the impossible, changed the game again after the game was already changed in the first place. I mean, it's that good, and that true to Spider-Man. I think it's always going to hold a special place because it just is that well reflective of the character.
All right, Jacob.
I'll try and work into the way. Like, this movie was around. I was around 10 years old when this movie came out, and at that time I hadn't even. I don't think I'd even seen the first one yet. So, or maybe it was around the time I watched the first one. I can't remember the exact years, but I don't. I remember I definitely did not see this movie in theaters. I did, however, catch it on alternate viewings, and I did get the DVD, the 2-disc DVD, which had the arm on the second disc, and
Oh yeah.
like the hand coming. Like I remember that creeped me out as a kid. Just that single thing where like the circle was in the center and all that.
Mm-hmm.
That was when. Long story short about my opinions of the movie. The movie, like I said, is definitely a step up, and definitely stands among the greatest of genre. One of the thing I'm most familiar with however, was the game, specifically the PS2 version of the game. It stands among one of the greatest licensed video games of all time. It was like a game I'd sunk many hours into. It was insanely fun swinging around the city. It actually followed the plot of the movie quite well, and even expanded upon the few elements. It really felt like an expansion of the movie, like all the quirky humor, all the strange things that happened. Like there's even a subplot featuring Mysterio.
Yep.
The Mysterio subplot was very strange. But it didn't really feel too out of place. So that's the thing that's one of the things I was most familiar with for this movie for the longest time. Watching back on the movie, though, I must say I am definitely say this movie. I don't think I'm not in the same camp that thinks it hasn't aged at all. I mean, I think it's aged quite well. I mean, it's aged like fine wine, if you will.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Are you stealing that from my Facebook post?
No.
Well, I literally just posted that on Facebook this morning, so you mentioned that.
Right. There are elements that have aged, but the big elements have not aged. You know, the story hasn't aged. I think the character building hasn't aged. I mean,
The action has not aged.
Exactly. And the CGI is incredibly. It looks incredible.
It's a very timeless movie, and it in some ways it even gets better as it goes along.
Yeah, much like Tim Burton's original Batman, this is definitely a modern day classic. I think everybody acknowledges that. Even the people who don't necessarily think it's held up, I think they would even consider this a modern day classic because it's ingrained so heavily in culture now.
And there's a reason why it's widely considered to be the best in its trilogy.
All right, so just a couple notes on the video game. Yeah, I definitely loved it. My favorite of the games was Ultimate Spider-Man. Nobody remembers that one, but I feel like that one's the Ultimate Spider-Man game. No pun intended.
I played that. I mean, I specifically had the one that had the interview, had like all the behind the scenes creative stuff on it.
Yeah, I love Ultimate Spider-Man because it was cel shaded and you played as Venom as well as Spider-Man. But anyways, I definitely remember the stage in Spider-Man 2 that always got me tripped up that I could never get past was the stage where Doc Ock, basically the origin scene with Doc Ock where the experiment goes awry. And, because basically in that sequence, you have to input like a bunch of Spidey sequence commands, Spider Sense commands all at once. And it's just really hectic and very hard. And then I also remember the Game Boy Advance version of the game literally started with the pizza delivery mission.
Pizza time.
Pizza time. All right, so it is pizza time to get into the backstory. We're running a little low on pizza time. So, much like the Oscars, much like how the Oscars has a way to kind of like play us off if we're going a little long, and no one knows about this. I'm kind of springing this on everyone, kind of putting everyone on kind of equal playing field right now. But if I get a sense that we're either running too long or on something, or if we're kind of circling the same points, you guys will hear this. And that'll be the cue. Like, we don't necessarily have to wrap it up out right away. But that'll be the key. Like, all right, guys, come on, let's kind of, So I just kind of came up with that as kind of like a rule of thumb to make this go by a little bit smoother and tie it in a joking way to the movie. With that in mind, Dragon backstory, what do you got?
All right, backstory goes a little like this. So, to keep it simple. So after Spider-Man, basically towards the very end of the production, pretty much as it's wrapped up, things are looking good for the movie. It pretty much instantly gets the green light for Spider-Man 2. Sam Raimi's involved, the whole shebang. So, Doc Ock, very interestingly, Doc Ock in many stages of the original Spider-Man was introduced and hoped to be included within the movie, and there was concept art. And I don't know if how involved John Dykstra got in terms of like just kind of designing Doc Ock at that phase, or like kind of the effects on Doc Ock and vice versa. The point is, there's some concept art of Doc Ock, and they were considering him for the first movie, but they kind of had the ultimate story realization that 3 origins are too many. We can only focus on Spider-Man, the Green Goblin. We got Ock. We got to out some from the movie, so they definitely want to put him in for the second movie. So there are a number of drafts, as there tend to be in movies, and they actually brought in the Smallville writers. They brought Alfred Goff and Miles Millar, Millar, they are. The point being, we bring the Smallville creators. They do a draft, and in essence, the draft they introduced 3 villains. They wanted to do Doc Ock, the Lizard, and Black Cat. Now over time, they bring in other writers like David Koepp, who worked in the first movie. They bring in Michael Chabon. And ultimately, what happens is Raimi brings in a writer that he really trusts. He brings in Alvin Sargent. He's kind of the basically from 2 and 3. It feels like kind of the Raimi signature in a lot of things is kind of Alvin Sargent's. You kind of feel
I think Sargent also did a bit of uncredited work on the first movie.
I believe that too as well. Yeah. So Alvin Sargent, he's kind of has fingerprints through the Spider-Man trilogy. Anyway, so. So basically, he sits down with Alvin Sargent. They're sifting through the story together, cutting out certain parts. Like they ditched like a bunch of love triangles. Like originally, at some iteration, there's going to be a love triangle between Doc Ock and Mary Jane Spider-Man, where Doc Ock he's usually a little bit younger. He's going to fall in love with Mary Jane. Then there was like a whole Black Cat thing, where instead of that love triangle, you have the classic thing where it's Black Cat, Mary Jane, Spider-Man, and that whole thing. So they kind of outs that, and Black Cat ended up in the Spider-Man 2 game, as many will remember.
Yep.
So, let's see. Suppose of course, they're setting up the Lizard, and then vice versa. Suppose they streamline some stuff and kind of play it safe. Like, well, maybe we'll introduce in the future, but at the end, Black Cat's a little too much for the movie. Anyway, all right, let's see. So, the movie hinged on adapting Spider-Man No More, and of course, this had a big Superman 2 parallel because, of course, Superman 2 had the big moment where Superman forsakes his powers. He has the red sun treatment. His powers are gone, and he's kind of learning to live with that and kind of instantly coming to regret that situation. So, Sam Raimi was definitely kind of paralleling that and, of course, adapting a long-standing Spider-Man story at the same time. So the question for the story really was, how do we introduce Doc Ock? And basically, they had a number of ideas. One that's very interesting I wanted to bring up is that one of the original ideas was for Doc Ock to be revealed to be the scientist, presumably working for Oscorp, who created the Super Spider. Originally, they were trying to kind of tie things together, I guess, and try and kind of have an easy introduction for him before they had hit upon the mentor idea. So let's see. The course with Doc Ock had a lot of really excellent practical puppetry on the arms. They used real arms as much as they could within the movie. They have some blue screen effects that still hold up remarkably well, by the way. A lot of blue screen effects that look kind of seamless. Because nowadays, we transition the green screen, and now it's just even more. We just have the dots and everything. They always have kind of forms of motion capture, but you're still using the green screen. Point being, blue screen was kind of a big one for this, and basically improved on a majority of the first film's effects in doing so. Let's see. So of course, infamously, Tobey Maguire, he had a back injury from Seabiscuit. So this caused a lot of rumors. So the rumor was,
I'm back.
My back. My back. So that is absolutely intentional in reference to this, by the way. So the idea is that Tobey Maguire injured his back, and there's the big rumor in Hollywood, as it were, is that there was talk of they're going to have to recast Spider-Man. This is where Jake Gyllenhaal, of course, now with the Spider-Man 2, is definitely in the movie. Jake Gyllenhaal was considered to replace Spider-Man because, as the movie brothers will attest, they look awfully similar. Jake Gyllenhaal and Tobey Maguire. At least for a time they did. They're thinking about Gyllenhaal, thinking about DiCaprio kind of filling in, and they were kind of tossing their names in the fray to take over. And again, this is all kind of rumored because the other rumor is that Tobey Maguire was perfectly fine and he was just holding out for more money given the success of the first movie. And However true one or the other was, the point being he ended up being in the movie with a really high salary, so I'll let you make your own inferences there. And of course they have the "my back" joke in reference to that. Big thing, the spider cam was introduced in the other movie, but they used it in only a few shots. Here the spider cams all over the place because there's all sorts of really great next level web slinging all throughout the city. That's thanks to the spider cam, which essentially is a VistaGlide camera. They kind of, instead of swinging an actor through the scene, they swing the camera through the scene, so you get like kind of the POV and the perspective. So you're actually going through the air via the camera. It's a really ingenious move, actually. Two things here. One, Danny Elfman. We got to talk about Danny Elfman here. So Danny Elfman, we kind of skirted around this in the first movie. So of course, we had the famous Elfman score on Spider-Man. And I love the Elfman score on Spider-Man too, but apparently this broke Danny Elfman to an extent, where Danny Elfman and Sam Raimi, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was pressure to do really well in the sequel or what. Sam Raimi became very demanding.
Really?
He basically, Sam Raimi, I don't know if it was demanding, he's being a little bit of a perfectionist, and I guess because there are more eyes on him for a sequel. I mean, Sam Raimi, he had done sequels before, like the Evil Dead trilogy, of course, but not to the extent of this many eyes are going to be on this project. Spider-Man, that's a big deal. And again, like the Superman 2 of your generation, that's kind of what he's working with there. It's a big deal. So so basically, there was this one cue. Here's what broke the friendship. Here's what broke kind of their dynamic. It was one specific cue, the fusion cue. Basically, the Doc Ock origin scene. Basically, whenever you hear the choir, like the da-da, you hear like the choir just kind of coming into play. That's actually a cue from Hellraiser that they bought. What happened was he kept striving to make it like Hellraiser, and that Hellraiser, I think it's Hellraiser 2 specifically. Christopher Young, who would go on to score Spider-Man 3. Christopher Young did that cue, and he says, well, if you want to sound like Christopher Young, why don't you hire Christopher Young?
It sounds remarkably like Spider-Man 3, by the way.
That's the thing. That's the Christopher Young signature. That he ends up going to him because, Elfman essentially, he kind of quit after the movie with Raimi. They hadn't worked together they stopped working together until they patched things up for Oz the Great and Powerful. I mean, it was that bad a breakup between the two of them.
Because God knows that was the movie that needed to happen.
But still, though, the point being, again, it's like the movie score. He strived for perfection so much on the movie that it kind of dissolved that really strong partnership that really, kind of made. And Elfman's never walked out on another director in his career, by the way. That's what's really big about that. He's never done that to any other director but Raimi. Big deal. I guess lastly, last thing with nostalgia, I think you guys are also going to agree on 2.1. Spider-Man 2.1. There's essentially, I guess it would be kind of now considered like the editor's cut, but I remember trying to win this thing in a claw machine throughout the years, by the way, just like trying to win a copy of, I don't know if I honestly, I can't remember if I don't think I won. I'm pretty sure I tried a few times. I ended up buying it some other way, shape, or form down the line. Point being, Spider-Man 2.1, I had a few scenes. Basically, it's mainly like they extended a few scenes that end up in the movie, maybe threw in a few alternate takes. The two big noteworthy changes were that when Hal Sparks is in the elevator, there's two versions of that scene. There's the one that we have in the movie, and then there's the 2.1 version, which is he realizes, oh my God, that's Spider-Man. He basically is a pitch man to him in the elevator. I'm thinking, he's trying to think like theme songs and everything. He's like, he tries to give him his card. He tells him no pockets. It's a good scene all the same. Just maybe doesn't play as well as what ends up in the movie. And the other big one is J. Jonah Jameson when he has the Spider-Man suit. He puts it on, and he's like jumping around in his office pretending to be Spider-Man.
God, really?
Yeah, you didn't know about this?
I did not know about this.
But
I've never actually seen Spider-Man 2.1, so holy crap.
And the muscles are actually J.K. Simmons' muscles.
Exactly. That's the problem. So that's why they really opted. Basically, 2.1 is kind of like all the stuff they took out of the movie or had alternate takes. So they just, literally, you don't need 2.1 at all. It's just kind of a novelty. But if you buy the DVD, it has like extra. It has like a whole different commentary tracks. It's kind of worth the purchase.
I've seen the extra scenes. I just never actually had 2.1.
Well, the point being, J.K. Simmons, he looked too good in the suit, which kind of defeated the gag. Where it's like he just does look so wrong for it, but he looks actually like he's auditioning for Spider-Man. Anyways, that's pretty much all the background.
Can you imagine J. Jonah Jameson as Spider-Man?
Oh God!
Like he's no longer a menace because I am Spider-Man.
I need pictures of me.
Wonderful me.
I think
take my picture, Parker.
We can't go. This can't go unnoticed here. fact that Alex Ross is going to be doing this comic, and he also did the artwork for this.
I'm
movie
so glad that you're bringing this up, Sandy, because I didn't know exactly where to mention it.
I was going to mention in prose, but by all means.
You want to talk about it, Tiki? You know more than I do.
No, we can talk about it in prose.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so let's get into the characters, starting with the hero's journey of Spider-Man.
Spider-Man!
Pizza time.
What? Oh, guys, you guys are hooked on that pizza one.
So, yeah, of course, everyone knows the arc of Spider-Man in this movie. It's not too complicated. It shouldn't take too long to go over. It's, Peter Parker, he's very much down on his luck. This is the classic, like, everything going wrong in Peter's life can go wrong. He's low on his rent. Aunt May is being foreclosed on. MJ is getting married to Jameson's son, the astronaut. Harry wants to kill him. Essentially, he wants to kill his alter ego. So it's like things are not coming up roses for Peter Parker in this movie.
Not to mention the rise of a new supervillain.
Sure.
Who knows?
Sorry. So throughout the movie, it's just kind of like the arc of like I need to hang up my suit to I realize that I need Spider-Man and the city needs Spider-Man as well.
Also, welcome to Pink Pearl Disney Wishes in the comments, who came back from the Big Easy. Welcome.
Oh, nice.
Here, Tommy Wiseau's from there, too.
That's always place to go for sure. That's on my bucket list of places to go.
I did not hit a hi, Spidey.
Anyway, getting back on point. So, yes, Spider-Man, of course, I think Tobey Maguire's a lot more comfortable in the role, and what's really great about Spider-Man here is that he's more fully realized, in terms of, like, when you think of Spider-Man, this is many a time this is the version I think of. In terms I'm thinking, like, it brings the drama to life. All the dramatic side of Spider-Man, we kind of elevate it from what we had in the first movie and really bring it fully to life here. Like this, like how does this again? We value Spider-Man what he does even more is seeing all the crap he has to put up with in life. Just that Parker luck is an overdrive in this film. It's like the consequence of the life of a hero that he committed to at the very end of the last movie. So the arc kind of continues where he's kind of living with the realities of being Spider-Man. Honoring Uncle Ben's words, but at the cost of a personal life. Again, one of the themes of the movie, of course, is sacrifice, and he's kind of sacrificing the life that he wants, which is kind of a simple, just kind of like existence where he doesn't have to worry about, mixing his costume with the laundry and having like red socks and everything. He just wants a simple, simple life there. And of course, he's very, very sympathetic in this film. Of course, there's a very kind of karmic level to what's with the arc of Peter Parker in this movie. It's really kind of karmic arc where New York is kind of against them to ultimately recognize the heroism and the sacrifice that he goes through in the movie. He's a nice guy who's rewarded for doing the right thing despite it being hard. That's kind of the lesson that he comes to learn through the movie. He's living with the choice that he made at the end of the first Spider-Man. Where we have this exemplified in so many great moments here, where we have the sacrifice of Mary Jane being the most cutting one of all, and that's where then. That's the last straw for him in both the power sense, but also the real last straw in the sense of like, I can't take it anymore. It's just the big question in the movie is like, how much can one guy take? I mean, he does all these amazing heroic things, yet he's just letting people down in his life. He's always late, and you feel for the guy. It's like, how much can one man take? Which of course gets us to Spider-Man No More, and just the just that choice to like, I want a life of my own. He renounces great power. It's just but ultimately he just can't rebuke the hero's call. The age old Joseph Campbellian story element. He just can't rebuke the hero's call, which leads full circle going back to the original choice to name Spider-Man in the first place.
All right. So anything you want to add, Sandy?
No.
Okay, so let's get right into Mary Jane Watson. It just goes on kind of a proverbial downward spiral. Like, I'd say in the first movie, she's decent.
Yeah.
Like, the first movie, she's decent. There's a couple moments with her that are iconic to the pop culture zeitgeist. In the second movie, the word I would say is, like, borderline tolerable.
You know,
Yeah.
she, like, at the end of the first one, she says, I love you, Peter. She wants to be there. And then this one, she's like, just get away from me. Like, you can come to my place. Oh, it's over. Just completely just gives him the middle finger.
Now,
and it's like she's dating this other guy. It's like, oh yeah, I guess that was. I mean, Peter should have just ditched her right there and then, because it's like, if she's gonna say that, I know there's a 2-year time jump, but I mean, still, it's just gonna say that and then go up for this other guy because he can't make her play or whatever. That's just no.
I mean, we can't remember. Well, we can't really completely blame Mary Jane for this. I mean, keep in mind Peter's also probably ditching everything as Spider-Man.
And that being said, I do think the reason why she's like borderline tolerable is that she does make a good point of like literally everyone, like my sick mother, has gotten out of bed to see my show. But the thing about Mary Jane in this movie is that literally the entire freaking conflict with Mary Jane is over this play, and I just feel like it's just, I don't know, man. I feel like the writers, like, Spider-Man 3 is a shit show with her, but I feel like at least in Spider-Man 3 they gave her a little bit more to do. Like, she's a little bit more complex than Spider-Man 3, even though she's very unlikable in that movie. In this movie, she's just kind of like, I don't know, just kind of like unpleasant just throughout, it's just, she's kind of one note.
I'd put it to you this way. I feel Mary Jane it's a mixed bag, which we'll get to a little bit more in cons, but just speaking to her in kind of the positive aspects here with her is that, she's dealing with, she deals with Peter's choice at the end of the first movie. She's trying to move on, and she's trying to grow up in the sense of, she's kind of moving on as becoming an actress. She's getting married. She's growing up in the sense of how we define things as growing up. She's not confronting her problems until it's too late. So again, while she's growing up, she's still being held back by something really childish, which is she's not. She suspects that he's Spider-Man. She does in the movie, but again, she's still, even regardless of whether you want to say like if she suspects it the whole time or not, because the idea is like maybe she kind of put 2 and 2 together with the kiss at the end of the first movie, or vice versa. The point being, she has like a slight suspicion of him, and she's not confronting the problems that she still likes Peter, or the fact that he may or may not be Spider-Man, until it's way too late, or it's literally forced upon her when she's kidnapped yet again. It's not allowing her to kind of deal with these problems. She's going to let things lie and just kind of moving on, because that's what she's supposed to do. I mean, at the end, she has an opportunity. At the end, ultimately, her story kind of evolves to her making choice being the other theme of the movie. You have sacrifice, you got choice, and choice is like she makes the right choice by the end with a really great scene where she's, someone needs to save you, Peter Parker. Like, that's a really great moment for her, Mm-hmm. That's why it's a mixed bag. Because I would argue this. I think the third act is where Mary Jane actually kind of becomes a really good character.
That's a fair point. That's a fair call.
Versus Spider-Man 3, where none of
kind
them
of like unpleasant throughout.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of interesting that what her play is about. The theme of her play is pretty much like people with dual identity.
I gotta be honest, that plays on. It's not a con or any stretch. I'm just saying it's really just a plot device, but it's just the fact that play just bores the crap out of me. I don't know.
Oh my god! Boo!
But
boo! You have no taste for theater culture, Dragon. Would the plays that I've seen bore the crap out of you?
Well, I'm just saying the snippets that we have in this movie of like I don't even know what's going on. I gotta be honest.
But I think it's supposed to be.
I love a good night at the theater, my friend.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a little bit boring, just because boring is often associated with class, and she's it's on Broadway, so there's.
No, I hear you. I don't mean to really like insult you, Dragon. It does look. I remember as a kid being very bored by those moments.
And of course, the important thing's okay. He's in the seat, or is he not in the seat? And of course, what's going on the outside, which we'll get to. That's the important stuff. Of course, it's just funny hats written. That's what's going on. Right?
Yeah. I think it's also it's supposed to like contradict the really good action scenes next to the really boring scenes.
Mm-hmm.
One last thing is I did notice, like, by the end, like, the really great thing about her story, again, while the first half may not quite support it, I'm going to make the argument that I think it's mostly performance. I don't think it's the writing, which we'll get to, but I think it's the, I love that, well, by the end, she's accepting responsibility. Like, that's her whole arc of, like, I'm going to accept responsibility about, like, I'm not going to worry about, being put in peril. I want to be there for him, even if it puts me at risk. Like, I'm making that choice to accept the responsibility, which, of course, ties in the whole Spider-Man shebang with the whole responsibility in. So that's kind of
Oh yeah.
All right.
All right, now let's get to Doc Ock. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Building to Doc Ock. Let's get to Harry Osborn.
He's in a transitional phase.
Wait, Doc Ock's in this movie? Who would have guessed?
Yeah, some guy with a few extra arms. I don't know. He's like a war veteran or something. Anyway.
We can call him
James Franco in this movie.
We can call him Doctor Strange.
Oh God.
Let's take him. Anyway. Okay, so Harry Osborn, Tiki, you were saying.
Yeah, I love James Franco in this movie. I think he's just the perfect amount of like dark and troubled, and you really buy his performance. I think this is really when James Franco was, coming into his own as an actor.
Yeah,
honestly, every time I watch this movie, it makes me sad for the lost potential that Harry had in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
It's definitely the best of him in the trilogy.
He is really just emotionally troubled in this movie and just really dark, and that really comes through.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he believes that Spider-Man killed his dad.
Yep. He's in a dark transitional phase. He's in the dark transitional phase of tragedy, where like Doc Ock is kind of a full tragedy, where Harry Osborn again is kind of like a tragedy. They're banking on like, yeah, I think we can pay this off. Even if we don't pay it off, I think it leads to a really good story within itself. Again, Harry Osborn's story is all about choice that he's ultimately going to be put in the position of making with the Avenge Me scene. But building to that, he. Avenge me! That whole thing. He's trying to live up to his father and kill Spider-Man, which is so fascinatingly, especially on a rewatch, is like again he's the curse of the Osborn family with the Green Goblin is that he's living the duality that his father lived, where again he's trying to kill Spider-Man, which is something the Green Goblin would do, but he's also trying to run a company and just trying to kind of live up to his father, again, getting in too deep in a business sense, just like he's emulating the mistakes of his father in both senses of the word, which is in a kind of a more narrative duality that will literally be an actual one by the next movie to an extent. And he's driven by a desire to become and honor his father, which basically leads to a number of again, it's kind of the son becoming the father in the negative sense, quote Superman. Son becomes the father, father becomes the son. He's emulating his father's poor choices, and this puts him like that scene where the drunken scene with him and Peter. I mean, it's a really it always struck. I mean, the very first watch way back, it always struck me kind of a weird scene. Like, why is Spider-Man always taking these slaps by Harry Osborn? What's going on? Of course, there's actually. I mean, on a rewatch, like I'm not saying that I haven't rewatched in between, but on the real narrative rewatch, on the real analytical one, I did notice that Franco's acting in this scene. You see him like brought to tears in that scene.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
in a deep depression. Like this is like right after the whole Doc Ock thing blew up in his face. Here, he's in a depression. He feels betrayed by his friend who's taking pictures of Spider-Man, who knows Spider-Man. Chances are, and he's just at the end he confronts his destiny. He has the ultimate test of you want to kill Spider-Man, do you? Okay, Spider-Man's your best friend. It's a huge moment for him, and it puts everything in perspective. And of course, that's when Norman enters the fray with Avenge Me, which is kind of the anti-great power speech. It's kind of like the Norman Osborn's version of great power, where no, avenge me. Okay, that's all your whole purpose is living up to my name. That's your purpose. Okay, avenge me.
It might have given away too much in the ad campaign, but I do vividly. The big thing I remember from the ad campaign, it's actually coming back to me right now, is that shot they have where Spider-Man's all chained up and Harry's just like, let's see who you really are. And he's about to pull off the mask. And it's just like, that was a great tag of like, okay, that's an inevitability in the movie. You have to watch the movie to see how it plays out.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Okay.
Okay, now let's get to Doc Ock.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness, Doc Ock. He is. I love Alfred Molina. Usually, I mean, this is still, I think, one of his best roles, if not the best role he's ever taken. I just think Alfred Molina was so good in this movie.
Science Doc Ock is a little silly, but other than that, it's a freaking perfect.
Well, Willem Dafoe is silly too. So.
Of course,
it's a running thing here. I mean, Topher Grace, the Sandman, they're all a little bit silly.
I mean, think about it. I mean, pretty much all these concept of superheroes and supervillains are silly in general. But that doesn't mean they can't be great.
Yeah, I got you. I'm not saying he's not great.
It's just Doc Ock. He's kind of this likable, tragic Icarus figure because literally, he flies too close to the sun in terms of trying to get the sun in the palm of the power of the sun in the palm of my hand. And I love, of course, the Peter. Again, we made some alterations to Doc Ock here, and honestly, Mulaney probably could have played both. Either he could have played just as the mad scientist, I'm sure he would have done a fine job, but we dug deeper. Again, this is kind of Sam Raimi's Heart of Ice to an extent. It's kind of Sam Raimi take on like the Heart of Ice story with a scientist, where he's Peter's mentor, which is something that the animated series kind of did, by the way. I'm pretty sure it was coincidental because he was a teacher at a science camp that Peter Parker went to, so they had a familiarity. It wasn't necessarily like a modern mentorship, but he knew him as a kid, and they always had a little bit of respect for Parker anyway. But
brilliant, but lazy.
Yes. And there's a lot of basically he represents he's Peter's mentor in the sense of he's all the Peter Parker's hope is embodied in Doc Ock and achieving balance within a difficult, Parker luck fueled life, which ultimately leads to tragedy. He loses Rosie, which I noticed this in the rewatch. He loses Rosie, and of course Rosie being a symbol of balance. It's Doc. It's being able to pursue what you're passionate about, like being Spider-Man or being a scientist, and having the love of your life and having just that sense of normalcy in your life. Like Rosie is the representation of that. And when she dies, and I love the moment that Doc Ock turns to Rosie, like the minute, like he's trying to balance it's a hectic situation, he's trying to get the generator working, and he turns to her, Rosie, and of course the minute the person that he cares about because of his life choice is killed. That's when the origin strikes. That's when he loses the inhibitor chip right there. It's when it fuses to his spine. The minute that's exactly what Peter Parker's fear is in this movie. His fear is, if I let someone in that I love, I'm going to lose them, or I'm going to put them in great danger. And again, that's the tragedy just unfolding, and all of Peter Parker's hopes go flushing right down the toilet.
And it's funny how I'm seeing a pattern here. How Peter always ends up battling his heroes. Like he looks up Dr. Octavius and ends up battling him and fighting him. He looks up to Mr. Osborn, ends up battling him and fighting him. So it's. They should have. There was a missed opportunity with Dr. Connors because they could have put him as a lizard and had.
You're right. They could have.
Oh yeah.
That would have been a pattern that worked.
Yeah. The same could not be said about Eddie Brock.
No, it cannot.
Yeah, there was.
I mean,
technically, matter.
Right. So
technically, the same technically can be said about Harry, but not Eddie Brock.
Not exactly, because Peter never looked up to Harry necessarily.
Yeah, Harry wasn't a mentor figure.
Yeah, Harry's just a friend who stole his girlfriend.
He was his best friend, so it's like that's why I'm saying that's the closest.
I see what you're saying. It is the personal connection of that movie.
Yes.
What's really fascinating about Doc Ock? The fact that Doc Ock's fatal flaw is. I love the parallel between great responsibility of all the villains, even more Norman Osborn's The Green Goblin. The best example of a villain that encapsulates great power, great responsibility in regards to this franchise is Doc Ock, without question. Because what he does is he basically takes Peter's flaw, but he kind of expands it here, where he's thrust so much responsibility onto himself in serving humanity with this fusion experiment. That leads to his undoing, because again, he has to do this, and of course, his constant pursuit of it after it fails the first time, he wants to do it bigger and do it right. Again, it's kind of the classic Marvel philosophy of you want a villain who doesn't think he's a villain. Again, he's a villain because he's trying to serve humanity to excess, and of course, his stability, his balance, and Rosie is gone. It's like, oh my god, all of that's great. My favorite thing in terms of the performance too with Alfred Molina is that I love how he can play the dramatic of it. He can be really imposing and physically imposing. Of course, with the grand visual of the arms, it looks fantastic. My favorite quotable bit for you guys are doing all that pizza time. I don't know why. It's every time I have a jovial thought about Doc Ock. It's that little bit where he's about to hand over Aunt May and drops her, and he looks like a schoolboy. Like a school bully almost. I love it. It's just
and the arms seem like an actual character as well, which really
the arms are an actual character.
Yeah.
A lot of time they're actually physically on set. Alfred Molina actually gave them names.
Oh, really?
Was it like lefty, righty, and something else?
No, it was like hold on, I actually have something.
Like help with Pataki naming her fists.
Was it Betsy and the Madam? Never mind.
I thought there was like Mo, there was Flo,
Oh God.
Like they had rhyming names. Like two of them shared rhyming names with each other. Hold on.
Anyway. So, to the point, like all those little jokes, like again, he has like,
they're named Larry, Harry, Mo, and Flo.
Right. Oh, one of them Harry?
Harry.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Flo's the top right one who performed the most work, apparently.
Cool.
Yeah, just remember those names when in the doctor scene when they're killing everyone.
Yes.
Remember that.
Anyway, so that's the thing. I just love how fun and playful he is as a villain. Again, it's kind of like the ego kind of being channeled into him, and while he's doing basically when he's doing bad things, there's kind of a little bit of a playfulness about him. It just feels like so delightful. While again, he's still this great, compelling character who can be really scary at the same time. So it's a mix of all these great things too. Like Peter Parker and the girlfriend. It's like he's so fun. Of course, let's see. Of course, he's doing all the classy Doc Ock bits. Like he's like smoking a cigar, like he would do in the comics. Again, all practically done with the arms and everything. Where he would catch the glass of bourbon or whatever Harry's drinking, like just before it hits the ground. Like yes, those are the classy Doc Ock bits I live for. And I guess in the end, he without getting too into it, he makes the ultimate sacrifice. Sacrifice being the operative theme of the movie, to do the right thing, which of course is Peter's lesson as well. There's an excellent parallel again. It's kind of the student becoming the teacher arc as well. It's like all of this. Like all he has is his philosophy, but his whole philosophy of again, you have to, if you have the brilliance, the whole brilliant but lazy thing where brilliance is a gift for mankind. That's his credo. That's what he lives by. And with Rosie gone, that's all he has. And of course, it's just he's defined by his failure, which is why he's doubling down on the philosophy. I have to get this right. I have nothing else. Otherwise, I'm just a monster for no reason. I have to get this right. And of course, Spider-Man definitely kind of opens his eyes to what's going on. So really, basically, it's a cautionary tale for Spider-Man. Again, if you don't have normalcy, you could become Doc Ock. There's just many fascinating levels of Doc Ock. We could be here all day. So I'll move on.
Okay.
Unless you guys have anything else, No.
Okay, so let's move on to the supporting characters, starting with Aunt May.
I think it's the best Aunt May stuff we get in the whole trilogy. I mean, she's great in the whole trilogy. Don't get me wrong, but this is the best stuff.
Yeah, her acting abilities really shine in this because she's put in a real state that she wasn't in the first one, or at least for the majority of the first one.
Oh my God! You know what scene just absolutely breaks my heart?
What
is it? The bill scene?
Yes, you can. You can take this money from me. For God's sake, it's not much.
Yeah.
Man, Rosemary Harris, man, there's nothing. So I love that she kind of embodies Peter's lesson too in that she's she's having trouble, like Peter, she's having trouble adjusting to the new status quo. For him, it's being Spider-Man. For her, it's like life without Uncle Ben, which of course leads to the kind of fiduciary problems where again, like she's not making enough money to pay the bills, and of course, Uncle Ben was still looking for jobs in his old age in the previous movie. And she's really, but here's the difference, though, and this is where it kind of inspires Spider-Man. This kind of inspires Peter Parker in his anti-heroes, that she's so prideful with that bit you just referenced, Tiki. She's so prideful and quiet. Like, she doesn't want him to know. And she's just handling it like a champ. Or again, Peter, he's handling it, but it's getting to him. Where again, she's just taking it like a champ. She's a hero in her own right, and kind of setting by example to Peter Parker. It's really cool.
Yeah.
One of the best scenes in this movie is when Peter tells her what happens to. Tells her what happened to Uncle Ben.
Oh yes.
Yes.
How he was responsible. I did that. I'm responsible for his death.
And Aunt May is the one person that she's the one person we can all look up to, because then her response later on when in the garage sale scene, or them packing things up. And she's not going to tear Peter down. She's trying to build him up and encourage him to do the right thing. It's like, what a character.
That's the thing that she says in that scene. Again, she basically gives him basically she gets him out of his funk for Spider-Man no more in that scene, where her advice is about the impact of Spider-Man. I love that. Well, of course, one of the things I really love about Aunt May in the movie too is I love how we put her in an action sequence, and again, we put her in jeopardy, and of course, there's always kind of a famous history between Doc Ock and Aunt May, so it's kind of appropriate we work her in some variety.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is, like, she's really in that bank fight. And famously, Aunt May's very anti-Spider-Man until she finds out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So, like, famously, she's many times she's a vocal kind of like dissonance on Spider-Man. So she sees firsthand the joy and the and how much of a benefit Spider-Man can be, how much of a hero he is firsthand. Like, there's that beautiful bit where Doc Ock, he's launching to save Aunt May by launching himself towards Doc Ock, and Doc Ock's cheating by having like the blade hidden in one of the arms. Shame on you.
Think about it though. He never actually uses that knife again throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, still, like, she just whacks him right in the head. She saves the day, and of course, like, that was kind of close back there. I mean, we really got him.
And she never got her toaster.
No, the poor woman never got her. But you see my point there, right? It's like, I love how it's firsthand her opinion has changed on Spider-Man.
Okay, I'm sorry. Who's making all that background noise?
Tiki, is it you?
No, it's not me.
It's not.
Sorry, that was me.
Okay, I did that. Stop.
Sorry.
Anyway, okay, what was it? Right. So I love that through all of this, she comes to learn again. She sees firsthand the Spider-Man as a hero, and her opinion has changed. And that's kind of what helps get Spider-Man out of the doghouse, in terms of his arc. Like, that's how he gets. And I love how her instinct is to forgive him. It's like water under the bridge, like over the dam or under the bridge, or over the saying goes. Like, she forgives him in a beautiful way, and it's just like she's just wonderful, absolutely.
Okay, let's get to the Bugle staff. Kind of basically a roll call here. So J. Jonah Jameson, of course, the one thing that Dragon knows I love about Jonah Jameson in this movie is the whole, like, my son, the astronaut. And not just that line, not just the meme of it all, but just the fact that he's so proud of his son. I'm proud of my boy.
Yeah, and I think the best stuff with Jameson too is in this movie, because we get that kind of hard-boiled businessman type, and then he's also the loving family man who's proud of his son. He loves his wife,
Like, a man named Octavius gains 8 limbs. What are the odds?
So,
there's that.
Also, where we get that infamous J. Jonah Jameson laughing meme.
You serious? You're fired.
Stuff with Hoffman in this one too is great, between Hoffman and Jameson.
Yeah, Hoffman's capacity in this movie is that he's helping J. Jonah creatively, where he helps kind of bounce off the names and everything. Of course, like Doctor Strange, that's good, or it's taken.
I always crack up when he says Hoffman. Yeah, he's waiting there for him. He's always waiting.
It is funny. Okay, but seriously, on Jameson, though, first of all, Tiki, again, if you love a soft side of J. Jonah Jameson, especially in regards to his son, the Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Both seasons, but oh my goodness, Spectacular Spider-Man. Anyway, but that's the thing, we see layers of Jameson.
How's Jameson in the game?
In the game? I can't speak to him in the Jacob. How's Jameson in the second game?
You mean in this
No,
game?
I mean in the new game, dude.
The new. Oh yeah, he's always wonderful. I told you, they do like a podcast thing with him. It's wonderful.
Yeah. He even has assistants. Like, I forget the assistant's name, but he's always like grading him. He's kind of like the Hoffman from this. He's kind of like Hoffman from this.
Basically, they updated Jameson in a really cool way. Where it's again, this is why I based my whole Ralph Garman thing on like the fact that I've seen the future of Jameson from the Spider-Man game. He's we're going the route of podcasting. It works pretty beautifully.
And it's not J.K. Simmons, but it's a guy pretty much trying to like do his own voice, but still obviously take after J.K. Simmons.
Anyway, so yes, I mean we see a little extra dimension on Jameson. He's in the movie more, which is kind of good. And again, just kind of adding a little bit of comedy, but also he's a proud father. He's and of course ultimately he comes around on Spider-Man for a mere moment. He kind of realizes again, it's like the old market. It's kind of he wins in life here with Spider-Man no more. I got him to quit. Power of the press. Hooray. But again, in facing that victory, he kind of he feels. He realizes the folly in his way for a moment there. But I love that just eternally, J. Jonah Jameson and Spider-Man are always going to fuel each other. They're always going to feed each other cyclically. It's always going to be like we gotta again, like you can't have Spider-Man without like that dissonance, without just that that J. Jonah Jameson in there, and vice versa, because without neither can ever win.
I want Spider-Man.
He's a thief. He's a crook. All right, so John Jameson. I mean, the idea he's the man in uniform. So the idea is like Mary Jane went.
There's
for the next
not much
best.
with John Jameson. The most famous thing about John Jameson in this movie doesn't even involve him on screen.
I mean, here's the thing. I just have two things on John Jameson. One, the only significant thing is it's a man in uniform thing, where the idea she went for the next best thing from Spider-Man, which is a man in uniform, and it's with an astronaut, so something heroic. And secondly, let's face it, he's just basically he looks like he's pretty much Jane Marston's stunt double. It's pretty much
Oh God!
Takeaway for John Jameson.
I got more satisfaction out of John Jameson being name dropped in Venom than I did out of this guy's entire presence.
Didn't John Jameson doesn't he also bring Venom back in the next movie?
That's what I'm. Well, no, he doesn't.
Well, that's in the animated series. That's what they do in the animated.
Oh,
series.
right. All right, I'm seeing that.
Which is cool though, and that's the thing they should have. I think the novelization they might
does bring Venom back in Venom.
He does that too, and I think it might have also worked in novelization. I don't know. It's been years since I heard about.
Oh, yeah, I know I did definitely like the Spider-Man 3 novelization better than I like the actual movie. I'll talk about that when we get to nostalgia.
I have another thing, a different, not novelization, something else I kind of like that. Well, we'll get there when we get there anyway. So, but yeah, it's not a lot with John Jameson, but seriously though, Tiki, you want to see some really good John Jameson, J. Jonah Jameson stuff, Spectacular Spider-Man. Okay, Robbie Robinson. So
really quick, of course, with the pre-MCU speculating about like, oh, what's Spider-Man 5 and 6 going to be like? Did anyone actually want Man-Wolf? Because I kind of wanted Man-Wolf.
Let me tell you the one thing I like about Man-Wolf. All right. So two things. Okay, one, Spectacular Spider-Man does the whole. In the second season, they kind of broach that it's not a Man-Wolf per se, but there's something akin to Man-Wolf, which is very compelling. But so that's the best memory I have of like a Man-Wolf sort of thing. The other thing is, I loved in the She-Hulk comics. She-Hulk was engaged to John Jameson, and the idea is J. Jonah Jameson was going to have an in-law. Well, he was going to have a daughter-in-law who was a superhuman. And of course, he's very anti-superheroes. It's this great thing, and they do some man stuff
like
within
the
that
classic,
story.
like father-in-law has to get over his prejudice,
but he comes to love her though, and it's great.
Yeah,
because this was during Civil War, so again, like she was helping, she was suing Spider-Man. It was wonderful. It's great. Anyway,
he hates them until they go up against Superman. I mean, Spider-Man.
Yeah,
can't believe it's
exactly. He just gave her a big hug in the sea. It was just hysterical. Anyway, okay, so Robbie Robinson. So this is the best Robbie Robinson moment in the whole trilogy for me. So I love Bill Nunn. Of course, he was in. The most famous thing he's done. I'm blanking on the name. I feel embarrassed, but he played. He was the guy with the boombox and Do the Right Thing. That was the best. Bill Nunn's
yeah, of course.
Of course, big pivotal role. I'm just blanking on the name because he had like a nickname. Point being, the guy with the boombox. So that's the thing. So Robbie in this movie, Bill Nunn, he does so much with so little. He plays Robbie Robinson so faithfully, yet again, he has so little dialogue, but he conveys so much. And we have the most impactful bit here when he's holding the mask. We have a bit where it's suspected, as it classically is of Robbie Robinson, that he might know that Spider-Man, that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He's kind of putting two together because he's kind of the calmer version of J. Jonah Jameson to be able to put things together like that. And of course, we have this beautiful moment of like genuine sadness when he hears that Spider-Man's going, he's holding the mask. It's such beautiful acting, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
But like Robbie doesn't have much in this movie, but what he does have is, it's pretty nice. It's pretty hard.
He's not a menace, Jonah.
Yeah, it's all he needs to say, but it conveys so much.
Right, and then Betty, is there honestly anything correct? Is there anything in the movie besides like, oh, I'm sorry, Peter, this doesn't cover the advance I gave you last?
Well, I mean, just basically, it's kind of a two-pronged thing. Just where she's giving Peter work. Like the idea is like every time Jonah fires him, like she's the one coming, updating J. Jonah Jameson about the planetarium job, or the fact she's helping Peter out. And the genuine idea of a lot of the female characters in this movie is that, Mary Jane notwithstanding, women are really soft on Peter, and they love they can't get enough of Peter Parker. They like the kid, and they're it's the idea like she sets up a lot of J. Jonah Jameson's comedy, but also she takes a liking to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Dr. Connors. I wish there was more of him, but I think Dylan Baker is absolutely perfect as him.
Oh yeah. He actually, I left this out of the first movie because I wanted to bring it up here. He actually, he's name dropped in the first movie. He's name dropped, and we set him up in the first movie where Dr. Connors fired Peter Parker because he was unreliable lab assistant. That's why he fired him. So again, the idea is he has a pre-existing history with Peter Parker here. Again, I think he views him as a nice kid with a lot of potential, given the whole brilliant but lazy thing.
Wait, that was the first movie? He was mentioned in the first movie? Okay.
Yeah. During the scene where Harry, it's between Harry and Peter's asking, he's asking, "What about that job offer? Dr. Connors fired me."
Norman, Jacob, you gotta quit whatever you're doing, man. It's really distracting. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let's see. Okay, let's see. One is like he was a nice kid with potential. Again, brilliant but lazy. And there's a little bit of a connect to Doc Ock too, because again, he knows Dr. Octavius, which again I'm sure was maybe a bit of a setup for three. Three had gone a different way as well. Like as Sandy was kind of pointing out, where again, there's definitely ways they could have gone with Dr. Connors.
I think in a perfect world, Spider-Man 3 would have been the Lizard and Harry.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Yep.
Would you? Well, I don't want to bog say a lot of Spider-Man.
Of course, in the Amazing Spider-Man, the Lizard just gets absolutely fucking wasted.
Well, maybe not entirely, but
not really.
Oh, I think that's a conversation for another day. But I hate the Lizard in the Amazing Spider-Man.
I disagree with that, but let's move on. All right.
Two versus two. This could be a tag team Disney debate right here.
Anyway,
he looks terrible.
Let's get Jacob Gulliver in to moderate.
All right, so let's move on to some new characters we have in this movie.
Yes. So, Mr. Dickovic. Yet another meme in the movie.
Of course, Mr. Dickovich. Of course, a little reference to Steve, the wonderful Steve Ditko. Hey, he basically these characters. This character specifically, he embodies Parker Luck. That's pretty much Mr. Dickovich's role. Just like, he's the runt hound. Of course, like people they have that beautiful $20 scene. Like you can take it. And of course, like he takes it. He takes it from
Brent.
Take him while he's down. But this guy's funny as all get out. He really is. And this guy's a great actor too. I've seen him in other things. Like the most famous thing I can remember him from, he was in Moscow on the Hudson. He played the Russian friend of Robin Williams in that movie. But anyway, so let's see. So we see that Peter Parker, the apartment. We set up the crappy apartment that Peter Parker has that definitely plays in the 3. But it's just the idea. He and Harry are a bit on the outs. Presumably he and Harry are on the outs, and that's why. Let me rephrase that. It's a little bit of Harry and Peter on the outs, but also Harry's father died. Therefore, Harry moved into his father's house. I believe that's what the actual idea is. So the idea is Peter now can't live in that apartment, paying for it on his own. So he has to get to the crappy apartment, which basically reflects the Parker Luck, and it's a downgrade from when he was rooming with Harry Osborn, to say the least. Then we have Ursula.
Yeah.
She's a lot of fun.
She is, and again, basically represents the Betty Brant thing too. But basically, a character that fully embodies, like women are attracted to Peter Parker, just kind of the innocence of it all there, and she balances out the Parker luck. She balances out the bad luck. Like there's some people in Peter Parker's corner, which is nice and refreshing.
All right, let's pro and con this thing, boys.
All right, Alex Ross.
Yes.
Yeah, so I honestly, I was tempted to take the opening title sequence as one of my favorite moments. I like it that much. I love that work.
Mainly, it's great. It's great because of all like the visual artwork that's done. Danny Elfman's score, and everything just comes together to make a great package.
Yeah.
Better than what they do in the first movie and the third movie with the opening credits. I mean, don't get me wrong, the third movie just uses footage, but it's so
the third movie with the opening.
I remember the third opening when the movie came out. I went and saw it in the theater, the third one. And
they go around with the symbiote in the opening for the third one. Is that what they do?
You want to know? Or you want to keep asking questions?
Well, let me finish here. Yeah, let me finish. So I went to the theater. I was so excited for the main titles, the opening sequence, because they're gonna have more awesome artwork, and it's gonna be all new stuff, and it's gonna look so cool. And then it starts playing, and it's just
you're expecting like a recap of Spider-Man 2 with that artwork.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the live action footage, and it's like, oh, that's not as interesting at all.
Of course, Alex Ross, one of the great artists of our time. Again, just his paintings are beautiful. We've used them a couple times on the channel here.
Wait, that's literally what they do in 3 is live action footage?
Yeah, don't you? Yeah.
That's so dull.
Well, they probably
But,
didn't
like,
have
that's such a
the
boring
budget.
choice.
They probably didn't have the budget to get Ross back.
Totally. Well, and also it's like a time thing too. He has to paint all those things too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the other thing. I'm sure again they had like a couple of years to probably do all.
Yeah, I
those
was going to
things.
say there's a 3-year gap between 1 and 2. Between 2 and 3, there's only a 2-year gap between 1 and 2.
Yeah. Well, that's a fair. I don't know. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Ross is also busy with other stuff too. I'd imagine. I don't know. The point is, they have to commission Ross's work too. I'd imagine as well. So it's probably doing all of those paintings. I'm sure is not a cheap endeavor. Anyway, so yeah, Alex Ross's painting is a beautiful way to recap things. Speaking of which, just kind of the very kind of basically it's like recapping the first Spider movie in comic form with high caliber artistry. Which, speaking of which, on a rewatch, especially really dawns on me. I always love the cinematography. See, the first movie has the editing, which this movie does not have. I'm not saying the editing's bad in this movie. I'm saying we have the transitions in the first movie, and I think
I would also say that the first movie has better pacing than this movie does.
I don't know if I'd. Well,
I feel like this movie, like, it's not a bad thing, but this movie does kind of lean into kind of like the cringe humor a little bit with the elevator scene and stuff like that. Like,
that's the thing. I think it's more breathing room
that are intentionally drawn out.
I'd argue there's breathing room, but that's fair enough.
No, you're not. There's breathing room. I'm just saying the first movie is paced. I shouldn't say better. I just think the first movie is faster paced.
Anyway, let me say this. So again, I love the cinematography. Of course, like the first shot of the movie is we bleed in from an Alex Ross painting of Mary Jane's like the actual live action poster, and of course just I think the cinematography feels very comic book. It's very panel like the cinematography. Almost every frame of the movie feels like a comic book panel.
It does.
If you really look at it.
Like this image looks like this. The image in front of us looks like a comic book panel.
If you really look at the movie on a rewatch, you kind of notice almost every shot. There's like it's so well constructed. It feels like panels of a comic. Even like the elevator scene, you would see panels where it's just like two characters in kind of a scene like that. Where I mean, the best example, of course, is the shot where Peter Parker is walking down the street after I believe just dragging his broken bike too. I think he's just walking down after he's missed the play and everything. He's walking down the street and. It was after the elevator scene. He's walking down the street, surrounded by all these posters of Mary Jane from the play that he missed.
Yes,
that's what I'm talking about. The cinematography just feels like just comic book panels all throughout, like almost every frame in the movie. Almost.
Of course, perfectly recreated frame of the suit in the trash can.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, you have all those great. And
not to mention the choice of colors.
Yeah, the color is it's more brightened in this movie. See, here's the thing: they wanted to skew down on doing daytime stuff because of the effects in the first movie, but now the effects look a lot better, and they're using the blue screen more. They were able to brighten things up, and it looks tremendous.
Yeah, if you look at the models from the first one, the Goblin and Spider-Man, well, the Goblin especially compared to Doc Ock, like the Goblin just looks like it looks terrible compared to Doc Ock in this one, who is probably a lot more intricate with all this fabric, this flowing cape.
Sure.
And his arms, he looks incredible.
You got to remember, during those train fight scenes, I mean, 80% of that, I mean, mainly except for maybe like a few roof scenes, perhaps. I mean, basically almost everything you see there, that's CG. It's two CG characters fighting each other.
I think what we're seeing here is the real people, right?
Yeah, I think so. Well,
see, look, it's so hard to tell. We can tell. We're looking at the image right here.
If I were to guess, I would say maybe Spidey is CG, and it's really Melina with CG arms.
Basically, if they're on the top or the end of the train, they're statically standing there, then obviously it's real. But I'm saying when they're battling on the side of the thing, like there's a lot.
That is a CG Melina. That looks like a really good, very well rendered CG Melina with the face.
Exactly.
I'd say at the most the arms are at least.
Oh yeah,
CG
I'm sure
here.
But again, in some scenes they are fully practical.
I mean, there are a lot of scenes where the arms are actually there and puppeteered.
Yeah, absolutely. They look.
That's got to be a real Melina. Looks too nice.
Anyway, so aside from playing the magic eye chart here, let's talk about. So of course they have the
Marie Garland, or is it Nicole Dubois?
Anyway, so the Elfman score, of course, is great. I mean, the Doc Ock theme again, whether it causes a split or not. I love not just the fusion theme. I love all the Doc Ock themes too, like the dun 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 dun. All that sort of. Really, all the new themes are really great. Adding on to the older Elfman themes as well. The action, I think we can all agree, the action is sublime.
The action is just. I would wager to say, Dragon, you're probably going to disagree with this, and I don't really care. I would say the action in this movie is better than a good 80% of the action in the MCU.
Oh yeah, I disagree with some of that.
I don't care. I don't care. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, I mean, look, I won't argue. It's great. It could definitely match a number of the.
I mean, I just think that each individual set piece in this movie is far more memorable than what the MCU puts out on average. I'm not saying it's as good as something like the last hour of Endgame or anything, but just on average.
Hey, look, I would agree with you. I wouldn't say 80% though. I'd make it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not saying definitively like, oh, it's better than anything the MCU's put out, but like the action scenes just have so much personality in this movie. The clock tower scene, the train scene, the pizza sequence.
They're just filled with an authenticity of Spider-Man. The best thing the scenes did here that we didn't get, they weren't gutsy enough to do in the first movie that we do all over the place here, and they waited just the right amount of time. Is fights while he's crawling along the sides of buildings. There's fights where he's just crawling up a building and fighting Doc Ock and climb up a building. Those fights, there's the Spider-Man fights.
Dr. Octopus really allows for a lot of creative fight scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with both, as you said, both villains being able to basically climb up walls and both being able to attack from a distance. It's like basically choreographed poetry in motion.
Of course, the as thematically, we could talk about the action all day long. Just pretty much every action set piece is amazing in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a loser, and they're all great. The theme of sacrifice and choice, as I mentioned, of course, the great power parallel with Spider-Man and Doc Ock already went into that. With Spider-Man No More, of course, we have the iconic shot of the suit in the trash can, and basically adapting that for the movie is a great call, and it makes it really stand out. Of course, Spider-Man No More is kind of like, if you can only read an issue of Spider-Man again, it's like the Thing, This Man, This Monster story. It's a great one-shot that, again, if you know the character, it helps, but it's a good kind of wonder, like why this character does what he does. So Spider-Man No More was a great choice, and of course, like little calls to Spider-Man No More, like at that time in the comics, he rode around on this bike, which of course is in the movie. Spider-Man No More callback.
I really wish that they were followed up on better in Spider-Man 3, but I freaking love the cliffhangers in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like even of course the Goblin one we'll get into, that's epic. But I love the graduate moment with Mary Jane at the very, very end, the final shot.
And of course, Mary Jane in a wedding dress, kind of a foreshadow for marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Are there any other cliffhangers I'm thinking of that continue into the next movie, or is it just the Harry and the Mary Jane one?
Harry, Mary Jane. Well, technically, again, in a sense, Doc Connors, but I mean...
Yeah, that's not really a cliffhanger. That's more just like, hey, he could happen.
But still really good cliffhangers, even if it's only 2. It's still really good.
Okay.
It's just Harry and Mary Jane.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to get off on a tangent here, but I remember Pirates of the Caribbean 2 had like 4 cliffhangers.
Oh.
It's like, oh my God, Norrington gave the heart to Beckett. And oh my God, Jack Sparrow's been kidnapped. And oh my God, and oh my God, Barbossa, and nobody cares about Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, I got nothing. I'm sorry. Okay, 2 things. Okay, I love in the on a rewatch, I kind of noticed these lines really jumped at me. These really great foreshadows and callbacks that are set. They're really genius in the writing here. Okay, there's 2 in particular. Okay, one is about the power loss, which I'm going to have things to say about that when we get to the latter part of this. But power loss on the positive side here, it's set up with Doc Ock. We set it up with. He has that line. He has this line about we talking about Peter Parker about like his undefined relationship with Mary Jane, saying, "Oh, not being sure." Basically, issues with love on being complications in love. Keeping complications of love inside can make you sick, which of course is the crux of the whole power loss thing. And the Aunt May Peter Parker scene where of course she tells her he tells her the truth about Uncle Ben. He mentions let me rephrase that. When he holds Uncle Ben's hand, which we saw in the first movie, we kind of set up, we call it back in that scene in dialogue, but we see it visually in the big Uncle Ben, Peter Parker dream sequence. In that scene, he offers his hand to Peter, which of course, the moment when he became Spider-Man, when Uncle Ben died, he was holding his hand. He doesn't take his hand. Huh?
Oh yeah.
All right, so on the whole, the Parker luck, the Spider-Man, the heroics and the Parker luck, like Spider-Man saving kids, man. I love my heroes save people. I mean, yes, that's Spider-Man done right for me, baby. Yeah, all right.
Don't play in streets.
And give it a moral too. I love it. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's anything major here because again, there's a lot of great stuff. We gotta keep it simple. I think that's good. That's enough.
All right.
Oh, cameos! All the cameos like Joel McHale, Hal Sparks, Emily Deschanel, tons of great cameos. Okay, cons.
Okay, cons. Boy, not much.
Again, you can count on one Doc Ock armor. I really had two major ones and maybe a few nitpicks, but the two major ones we got to talk about here. Power loss.
I don't even mind it. It's just it's a plot convenience, but it's a good story driven plot convenience.
I would disagree.
I wish there was more explanation, sure, but it's kind of a Pixar pass sort of thing. It's like the rest of the movie is so good.
Let me say this though. Okay, so one, it reads as like they just need an excuse to have him run out of webbing because we can't have it because he has organic webbing. So we need that famous moment from the Spider-Man comics where, oh no, he's out of webbing. What's he gonna do? Or of course, how are we gonna do that when it's organic? So that feels like the reason they have it in it. But I found out. I left this out of the background because I want to say it for this. That originally the way the story was going to go, and this sounds like a better way of doing the power loss, is that Doc Ock, there many times in Spider-Man, like in Spectacular Spider-Man, they do like a cure subplot where Spider-Man is actually there's like a cure for his powers, and Doc Ock was supposed to kind of create a cure for his powers. Again, whether or not it's like the whole like he created the super spider, therefore he would have the information that would be able to create like a cure, like a temporary what he thinks would be a cure for the spider powers. That was going to be a subplot. Their point is they're going to do a little bit. There's going to be more like a scientific explanation for the power loss. In the end, they made it like a psychosomatic thing, which basically leads to a really weird doctor scene. Remember that scene with the doctor where it's just like,
I forgot about that. Yeah, that is very weird.
It's like here's the thing. It's not, I would give it a pass, but then we have moments like, my friend has a dream that he's Spider-Man. It's like, really? Are you really going to try to pull that on the doctor? Really? Yeah, dope.
That doctor scene, you're right, is by far the worst scene in the movie, I think.
And you know what? It's stuff like that, though, that reminds us, okay, this is just a movie. It's not perfect. It's just a movie.
Yeah, but you're right. The thing is, though, like that they're really tying into like the whole thing where it's like a tie into like Peter becoming a man and like it's like performance issues and stuff like that. They're really tying that into it's kind of like that thematically thing into all that. You know what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. It's like I don't want to take major points away from. I'm just saying if you're looking for any cons, there's only two that stick out, and that's the main one. Which again, I agree with you. It's kind of a pass. Where again, you need it to get there, but by the same token, like Spider-Man No More, he doesn't lose his powers, he just gives up. Which again, you don't really need a power loss at all, technically.
Which to be fair, if he just gives up and just like that, really wouldn't make much of a compelling movie. Makes for a great comic, just not much for a movie.
Sure, but by the same token, again, if he gave up with the powers, again, the point is, I think the power loss they could have used maybe another spin on it in some way, shape, or form. Like the power loss kind of takes the choice out. That's the only negative thing I can really say about the movie. Then we get into the Mary Jane issue, where here's where I argue about Mary Jane. So Mary Jane is, I kept trying to make excuses for it. I've come upon this, guys. I think the writing is there. I think the writing's actually fine on this, but I think honestly it's a systemic thing from the trilogy, but mostly on Kirsten Dunst here. Here's the problem. It might be the acting, but it's kind of the damage that was done in Spider-Man 1 where we turned her into a plot device and I'm not saying it's like she's bad in the first one. I'm saying she's built into the plot in the first one. She's a damsel in distress, and there's like maybe a few things you can glean there, but you have to search for it. And here it's the fact that we didn't have a lot to work with in the first place, and we need to have her kidnapped by the end, and we need to, it's honestly all the dialogue between the two of them and all those things where she just comes across all wrong. I don't know if that's her acting or if that's just the damage that was done in the first movie, right?
Yeah.
But again, the third act is pretty good though with her, so that's again kind of a self-canceling point to an extent. But again, it's like 2 out of 3. That's not necessarily good. Any nitpicks, guys, or?
In this era, I kind of wish that the Stan Lee cameo was a little more significant.
Yeah. He was supposed to be Stanley was supposed to guy that say, "Hey, he stole that guy's pizza," but he was sick, I think, so he had.
Oh, really?
I actually saw something in one of the extended bloopers where he actually is like he stole that guy's sneakers.
God.
And then he's like sneakers, and he couldn't believe he just said sneakers.
Yeah, he was sick, I think, or something like that. Or he was busy with another project, so he couldn't do it. Maybe. So he stepped in later on, and yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, he did say by the end, let's face it, the cameo in 3 made up for it.
It's kind of funny.
Oh.
Sam Raimi, until again, we'll get to 3. I don't want to talk about 3 right here, but the point being, the first 2 again, he had alternate takes, but then ultimately got cut. He's supposed to like pick up the girl and run away. Just kind of pulls her out of the way. Look out! And there's the whole there was the whole sunglasses vendor thing, which could be, hey, it's like they wear in the X-Men. What, right? But again, they ultimately got cut. Yeah, I think it was because they didn't want to tie in the X-Men too much. I think that's why they cut.
Yeah.
Okay, mainly. Oh, so here the very small
You
nitpicks.
know that we don't own.
One, I do love the Uncle Ben scene, but I will argue, and I will.
It's
I will.
weird. I'm totally with you, Dragon. It's like the Uncle Ben scene. I love the sentiment of it. I love where its heart's at, but it's a little weird.
Because again, they're doing the Jor-El moment from the Donner Cub Superman 2, where he's pleading to his father to take his powers away. That's what basically that's what they're doing here, and it looks very Donner-esque too, with all the white background and everything.
Right.
But here's the thing. If only he were asleep, it'd be fine. But he's not asleep. That's the problem.
right.
That's the weird thing. Because I love that scene. I would defend that scene, but on a rewatch, like, yeah, why is he awake? Why do we have All right, the only 2 these are very, very minor sparing things. With the blue screen effects look great, and I think that lends to the authenticity of the action. But you do notice though, this is like what Back to the Future had contend with, where you have to wash out the blue jeans against the blue screen. But again, the effect looks great because it's blue screen. I think blue screen turns out better than green screen for the most part if you look at old movies versus the new ones. But here's the thing: Spider-Man in the train stuff, which is some of the best stuff. Again, a lot of CG there. The costume looks a little like black on the red, which basically looks kind of now like the Far From Home suit, technically. It's kind of the ironic thing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's a very small. I mean, it's blue enough, but it's really like kind of a dark blue. So it's a very, very minor point. And the only other minor point is that, New York isn't really vocally against Spider-Man. The worst thing New York says against him in this movie is, he stole that guy's pizzas. That's really the worst. Again, we don't really have examples of New York being against him.
New York as a whole got its character arc in the first movie.
That's the thing. I mean, you can see that again. A very
man, you mess with all the fucking New York.
But you see what I'm getting at, though.
Are we still on the pros or are we going cons now?
Con.
Okay. Well, I guess that you could kind of sandwich this in between the pro and cons. The extras in this movie.
Oh, they're a little silly, especially the one woman that like runs towards the camera and the doctors.
Yeah.
Or in the subway, they're like, yeah, we're extras and we're in Spider-Man. Cool.
Well, Phil Lamar was an extra, but
yeah. Oh, yeah, he was. Yeah.
Heck, John Landis had a cameo too.
Yep, and he played. The fun thing about that, by the way, I meant to mention this in pros too. We used the Darkman now, so again, we're doing some of the Raimi tropes there with the. It's an Oldsmobile, by the way. That's what the car is. The Oldsmobile. It's in all of Sam Raimi's movies.
Yeah, Phil Lamar, man, he was doing great back then. He had Samurai Jack, he had Mad TV, and then he got this. Wow.
Yeah.
And also Foster's.
Of course, Justice League being a big one. So.
Oh yeah, he was doing great.
Futurama.
He actually still is. He actually still is doing pretty well for himself.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, and so like the Darkman alley, and of course the Darkman Connect as well as that John Lance was a doctor in the Darkman scene as well. So it's kind of a little kind of continuity there. It's kind of funny. All right, let's see. So, so you guys got anything else with cons or?
No,
I mean,
one thing I'll say is that Doc Ock, Octavius, he's really upset about his wife, but then he kind of just brushes past it. It's never really mentioned again. I've always thought that was kind of a con, but then I realized that these arms are kind of taking control of his mind and don't really care about Rosie. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Is that a con?
I mean, the Rosie thing doesn't bother me because again, I think again, she's lacking from his life. Therefore, it jettisons the arc. Therefore, it's kind of like it's in there and he's feeling it. So it was a really traumatic way we killed her off. So I think that's we have like those Raimi touches, like the hospital scene and such. Of like, I mean, I'll make sure I'm not stepping over any moments here with the hospital, am I?
Yeah, Jacob has the hospital.
All right, we'll get to that. We'll get it, but not hospital notwithstanding though. We do have like these great Raimi horror scenes, like the way she dies.
When it's the glass and her reflection in the glass. That's
again comic book framing too, just like the reflection within the glass. Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
All right. Favorite moments and listening. Well, I will say that my dad he's always had a very small nitpick with this movie, which is that like you would think that it's the inhibitor chip, right? That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Okay, you would think that the inhibitor chip, like it's always kind of like my dad loves this movie, and we'll get into that with my favorite moment. But the inhibitor chip has always bothered my dad because he's like, God, you would think that something with such an important like weight behind it, like, you know, making sure that these arms don't, you know, completely overtake this dude. You would think that the chip would be a little bit more protected, that it wouldn't break so easily.
To be fair, it's not that it broke easily. It's the fact that, again, it was like a huge, like a literal sun, like fried it. Okay, it's like I give it a pass on that. Could it have been coated in the stuff?
Well, I'm just mentioning it because it never bothered me, but it's always something my dad brought up every time we would watch it. All right.
All right.
So favorite moments, Sandy, I believe you have the first one, so why don't you go ahead? Well, ironically, you have the first one and the last one, so what do you guys think? Should we have Sandy go first or last?
Oh, you might as well go first.
Okay, go ahead, Sandy.
Well, I had the pizza delivery scene in the beginning, and the really great ending we had with Harry and the Goblin's Lair, the whole "Avenge Me" scene, that famous scene. I'm going to talk about the ending first.
Okay.
Wow, we all know how great this whole ending is. This twist.
I remember the jump scare with the mask always used to get to me.
Yeah, you know, I remember when I first watched this movie, because I've always loved the Goblin. I'll always love the Goblin from the first movie, and I wanted to see more of Willem Dafoe and the Green Goblin character. I thought, oh man, I watched the entire movie. Oh, he's not in here at all. Oh man, well, of course he's dead, but you know. Then at the very end, Willem Dafoe shows up. We hear the laughing, just like in the first one. I thought, oh my gosh, he's back! I was so excited, and then Harry finds the actual lair behind the mirror, which is great. It was great foreshadowing in the first one when he's talking to himself in the exact mirror. It's brilliant. And he had the whole Hamlet type thing with Norman's ghost talking to, or his Harry's hallucination, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Just really brilliant ending there, and with of course the whole reveal, the lair at the end, and the whole choice that Harry's left with is it's really great setup to something that could have been executed a lot better. As for the pizza delivery scene, it kind of speaks for itself. This scene is it's really hilarious. It's a perfect introduction to the daily slice of life stuff Peter is dealing with now that he's out of high school. When he's not Spider-Man, he's racing off to college. He has this part-time job delivering pizzas for this really small pizza place. He's really bad at his job, but he really really good.
On Doctor Strange's block too, which is kind of funny.
What do you mean?
On Bleecker Street, it's where Doctor Strange is.
You lost
Nice.
me.
Doctor Strange and
anyways, pizza time. Done.
Go.
It's just the fact that it's just such a great mundane job for him, you know.
And that was one of the side quests in the game was delivering pizzas.
Oh yeah. In the Game Boy Advance, it was the opening level, but in the PS2 game, it was like all over the place.
And I love in the third movie how you can see when Peter's riding his bike in the beginning, he's wearing the exact same helmet from the second movie. The sticker is still kind of torn off.
Love it.
At least he got to keep the helmet.
Okay, so here's the deal. Dragon has the last scene chronologically, so I'm going to save him for last. And then I have a scene that kind of follows up one of Jacob's scenes. So we're going to go Jacob, then me, then Dragon.
Oh, I'll point that Sandy technically had the later scene, but by all means.
I know, I flubbed that up, but I'm kind of making up for that.
All right, well, I guess I'll go. Want me to just go chronologically for mine?
Yeah, end on the train scene.
Okay, well, the first scene, like An alternative, and by the way, an alternative one would be where Peter tells Aunt May about what happened to Uncle Ben. But the moments I went with was the hospital scene specifically where the one where basically Dr. Octopus is born.
Yep.
That scene is basically, I mean, if any scene in this movie is shot like and placed out like a horror movie, it's this one. Basically, where the man becomes the monster.
Oh yeah.
Where basically all these doctors are trying to figure out what happened with Dr. Octavius, and suddenly these mechanical arms start attacking everybody, and ironically enough, a bloodless carnage.
Anybody take shop class?
It basically the fact that there's no music, just the horrifying screeching of the arms and the terrified reactions and deaths of the doctors involved. It's like they said, if anything, it's pretty much straight out of it wouldn't be out of place in a horror movie.
I love the choreography on all those deaths, by the way. They just, oh my goodness, it's such a well-staged scene.
Oh yeah. And the fact that there's no music in there actually makes it a lot creepier.
Yeah, like that woman getting dragged in the darkness.
Basically, it's the one time where there's no Danny Elfman score playing.
Yep.
The fingernails, man.
Yep, scraping the linoleum. Just, oh god.
And of course there's probably this scene where Octavius is screaming to the sky and the arms follow his.
Yeah.
I would say that's a much better no than any Vader no.
Oh, they'll give you that, yeah.
I mean, out of context, that scene can be a bit kind of funny almost. But within everything, that stuff is actually comes up as like quite tragic and almost terrifying.
Yep.
Like he knows what just happened, but he knows
For everything
he knows
arms do. He then has like the little tender moment where like they remove the blindfold.
and he knows he's partially responsible for what happened. He's not liking what he's becoming. Basically, Raimi tapping into his roots.
Oh yeah.
And the next scene, okay, that's pretty much all I have to say there. But the next sequence is the train action sequence.
The train scene.
Yes.
I mean, probably one of the most famous sequences in the superhero genre, still to this day.
It's exciting, guys. We can't forget that the hospital scene was also the big entrance for the arms and their full capabilities and the just beautiful dance movements they have.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. But as I was saying, it's kind of this scene was actually filmed in Chicago, because Sam Raimi was one of these trains, but they're not in New York anymore, so they filmed in New York. It's like they could pretty much be anybody's New York, basically. So that's a fun fact about there. It's basically one of the things I was referring to earlier about the creativity of the fight scenes, where very few other villains could actually fight Spider-Man like this, and Spider-Man wouldn't really get on a train that much. This is actually a very interesting, very intense, very action-packed scene that really, basically, this scene is almost worth the price of admission alone. I mean,
oh yes, it is.
I mean, it's basically a spider and an octopus duking it out at 80 or so miles per hour, maybe
Put that
even more.
On a poster today.
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the concepts of this movie just revolved around that one scene. I mean, that's the big money maker, I could tell.
Remember the evolution of it too. Remember, it starts off in that tower fight, which is the thing keeps going and it lands on the train, and he allows him to he lets him tire himself out with stopping the train. It's great.
Yeah, basically, this is one of the few fights where Doc Ock actually comes out on top, and it's another kind of sadistic choice. Do you follow me or do you save this train full of people?
Remember when Doc is just throwing people off the train and he catches them with the webs?
Yeah.
It's basically it keeps you on. It's a one fight that keeps you on your toes the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
I like that there's as much going on off the train as there is on the train. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love the moment where Peter like has to web swing to get back to the train. You know, he has to kind of catch up, so he latches onto the train.
Oh yeah, I think in this one he does the really cool. You're basically he's kind of sliding on the ground. Movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
love
believe
that.
it. Ironically enough, I think this is like the most actually Spider-Man-esque action sequence in the entire trilogy.
I think you'd be right about that. Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, all the other movies take advantage of like the altitude and stuff, but this is like the one where it's like uses like all of his capabilities to the height of its capacity.
Spider-Man becoming one with New York within the action sequence.
Exactly. And that's what makes this great. I mean, talk about something like ripped out of a comic book. This is a scene that like make people like turn the page and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I mean, I think this is on. I'm surprised. I'd be surprised. I'm actually surprised this wasn't originally from a comic book, considering a lot of stuff was lifted from it. But I mean, this has been even after the years of not watching the movie. This is one scene that always sticks out. And basically, I mean, it's been like I said, worth the price of admission, even though I never actually saw the movie itself. This is worth like just the price of even just buying the movie or renting it.
Train sequence in itself, in its entirety, that's a short film that is everything you ever need to know about Spider-Man in one sequence.
Spider-Man, Dr. Octopus saving people. I mean, what else do you need to know?
You have the battle, iconic foe, and of course we have the moral and the connect to New York, which is what we're going to be getting into shortly. So it's all there. It's everything.
And with that, Tiki, I pass it on to you.
All right, so this is more my dad's moment than my moment, but since Father's Day just happened, I would be remiss if I it. Yeah, my dad, he's not a man who tears up in movies like I do. I mean, he certainly has movies that he does tear up in, but I tell you what, guys, this moment is definitely the most consistent. Like every single time I've watched this movie with my dad, it's a considerable amount of times because this is one of me and his favorite movies to watch together. I mean, this moment gets him every single time, just consistently. And it's not one that I necessarily tear up in, but I definitely understand the significance of it. But it's definitely because my dad, obviously having kids himself, the whole like he's just a kid, no older than my son. It's like I know I've been repeating that ad nauseum to describe the scene to you guys behind the scenes, but it's just like that has so much power, so much resonance, and even though it doesn't affect me quite as much as it affects my dad, I definitely see the power behind it. And to me, it's like the true meat of the the train scene is right at that very end. It's like it's the reason why the train scene kind of lands as well as it does. It's not just the action, though the action's wonderful, but it's this awesome kind of powerful moment, them sort of like lifting Spider-Man and the kids giving him the mask and everything. It's a very haunting, somber yet uplifting at the same time kind of scene, and it's really it does illustrate what Spider-Man's all about, the connection to New York, the people saving him. I think it's a lot more subtle than the whole like you mess with Spider-Man, you mess with New York, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. It's a lot more subtle than that, and I like it a lot. Go ahead.
I also say it's a quite bold narrative choice too. Like,
Oh yeah.
I mean, one of the cardinal rules of Spider-Man is like I must never be seen outside of my mask.
And
But at that point, like, even as Spider-Man loses his mask, he thinks saving these people is more important than my secret identity.
Yeah, and what it points out is that it's not necessarily like people don't even really know his identity, but they do know they see the face behind the mask. They don't necessarily recognize him, but they see the humanity.
Mm-hmm. It also kind of lends itself to maybe just like kind of an unspoken scene we'll never see, but do you feel it all the same that if you see this guy on the streets of New York, you'll have a moment where you just kind of nod to him like thank you without having to say it. It's just that moment again. That's what's so beautiful about this moment, Tiki. Again, it's Spider-Man as a New Yorker. Where this whole movie is so indicative of what he's been going through the entire movie. Where again, it's like New Yorkers, like, it's like New Yorkers have seen it all, and they'll be angry at all, but they're also band together when it's important. This is kind of like your post 9/11 Spider-Man. Like, everyone, there's that sense of community. There's a sense of, in the face of tragedy or tribulation, where like everyone needs to come together. It's like, he saved our lives. We're showing this gratitude towards him. And it's like that's the reason I had that nitpick earlier, because again, this scene's so beautiful. Yeah, we don't really see New York against Spider-Man, but it doesn't matter because this scene's so beautiful.
Oh yeah. All right, and then this won't take long, but just to round things out on a really silly note, I love Bruce Campbell in this movie, and it's definitely my favorite. It's my favorite of the 3 Bruce Campbell cameos.
I love
me being. I'm sorry. Me being a theater kid myself, I can just totally, honestly, guys, true story. Like, this ingrained in me. Like, I will never be late for a performance because of this. Like, and I've been to plenty of performances where they do seat people who come in like 5-10 minutes late. I've been in plenty of performances like that. But it's just ingrained in me. It's like kind of like in my real life, like, of course, as someone who sees about 2 plays a month on average, I'm just like, oh my God, I don't want to disappoint Bruce Campbell, man. I don't want to ruin the illusion. So yeah, there's not much to say about it, but the one thing I will add that I kind of took away on a rewatch is that, remember when Peter calls MJ and he's leaving that message, and then the message just cuts off on the most awkward note, like, somebody has to talk to that usher.
Let's talk to somebody about that usher. And also, of course, the usher thing too, of like the long-standing, kind of speculation that, and it's pretty confirmed as far as I can tell, Bruce Campbell was going to be Mysterio, and they were going to tie it together. Bruce Campbell in each of those movies, just Quentin Beck with a different job and a different gimmick. Of course, the most befitting of Mysterio would be the theatrical one where he has like that illusion line. But I love about Bruce Campbell in this scene though is that I love how he's helping him out initially. Hey, tie, shoe, excuse me, can I help you? Oh my God, Bruce Campbell is wonderful. Best costume for him too, by the way.
Groovy.
Yeah, groovy indeed. Okay. I think that brings it to me then, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to keep this simple. So, of course, I think unanimously we all love the train scene, but it had to go to somebody. So, train scene notwithstanding, for me, the other 2 instant go-tos would be Peter Parker. Yes, folks, not Spider-Man. This change. Peter Parker running into a burning building to save a child. I love when heroes save people. This one had an extra oomph to it. And this, to me, was Raimi's look. I'll say a number of great, beautiful things about the Donner Superman films, especially the Donner cut of Superman 2. But even in the Donner cut, we still keep the scene that's in both versions, where it's Superman. Superman goes in that diner and he kind of beats he gets beaten up, and later on he comes back and he kind of like teaches the guy a lesson. I argue he doesn't really hurt the guy, he just like slides him into the pinball machine. Point being, some people say Superman shouldn't do that sort of thing, but what we do here is the far better answer to it here, where Spider-Man is in a situation where he doesn't have his powers. And we have to show there's a consequence to that, and we do it in such a beautiful way where he still has that heroic urge that he can't shake. I mean, as a kind of a little kind of like a prologue moment, I guess I'd say. I love the moment where someone's being beaten up in an alley, he just turns away from him, and he walks away, and he just because again he can't get involved because he doesn't have the strength to kind of fight the mugger, and of course it's very akin to like an Uncle Ben moment where like you could stop a crime but you can't. That moment haunts him, and then we're in the thick of it here where again he has like another moment of again. Operative theme of the movie, choice, where you have a choice right now. Like somebody needs help. Are you going to go in there? He knows he doesn't have the spider suit underneath it all. He just does not have the powers, but he runs in anyway because he just can't turn away from someone else in need. He goes in there. He saves the little girl. He's in peril at every second. While there's backdraft all over the place, he makes the jump. The kid actually saves his bacon for a bit there. It's a really intense moment. He comes out of there saving the girl. It's a really great triumphant moment. And then the moment that's most effective for me. All of that is great. And again, it's really empowering. It's superheroes saving somebody in their regular guise, which is kind of even more impactful to an extent. But I love the fact that the firefighter comes in and you got Guts Kid. And of course, like then we have, I'll admit, a little ill-timed, but still powerful all the same. It's a little ill-timed that other firefighter come by and say, some poor soul got trapped on the 4th floor. Little ill-timed, buddy. But aside from that, what I love about that moment though is the read on Tobey Maguire's face where you see like it's kind of his Oscar Schindler moment. I could have saved more. He could have, where it's the fact that like, oh man, if I had my powers, I could have saved that poor soul in the fourth floor. It's like even if you do good, you could be doing more good as Spider-Man. It communicates so much.
It's almost like the line from Spider-Verse comes to mind. It's like the hardest part of the job is you can't save everybody.
A wise pig.
And you know what, Dragon? What makes that scene even better is that the fact they play the music from the fight from the first one, the firefight from the first one, inside in that scene. So It's like it's giving you the ideas that Peter's having all these memories of. That makes it even better. I'm wondering if that was a result of Danny Elfman leaving. You think so?
It's entirely possible, but because that's the thing, Elfman. I don't know what we do have with Elfman. I'm pretty sure Elfman stayed to the end of the production. That's the they had Elfman score, but I'd imagine if things were tense between them, perhaps they'd just be more inclined to use existing themes. Maybe that's it. Not sure. But anyway, in regards to that, but you were saying you did bring up an excellent point. That, of course, in the first Spider movie, there's a scene where he saves the baby before he gets into the Goblin fight, and when he does that, again, it's kind of maybe against Spider-Man saving a kid, now Peter Parker saving a kid. Maybe there's a little bit of symmetry there. I don't know. All right, other moment, the more impactful one. Again, if I had any moment aside from the train scene, if I could only have one moment from this movie, I Will Not Die a Monster, the demise of Doc Ock. Oh my God, I love this scene so much. And one of the most impressive CG renderings, because when he goes down, that's a fully CG Milena, by the way. When he sinks to the bottom, like in front of the camera and everything, that's entirely CG recreation. That's amazing. So, I Will Not Die a Monster to me is one of the most impactful moments for the Doc Ock story here. Is where the tragedy, again, the Icarus part of the tragedy here, where again he flew too close to the sun, but he took responsibility for flying too close to the sun. We're basically, in essence, without going through a whole thing on Doc, I kind of got a lot of that already when we covered Doc Ock, but just the big part here is that in the end he takes responsibility for his action. He respects Spider-Man. Spider-Man was willing to do it on his own there, but out of respect after that wonderfully brilliant but lazy. Again, just the charm that Mulaney is channeling into that role, even like such a quiet, it's in the heat of the moment, just like a little quiet moment between them, or just like a little quiet callback. And then we have this great dramatic, like, you have to help me stop this. It's like there's no way to stop it. You have to drown it. I'll do it. Again, of course, like he doesn't let Spider-Man do it because he has to take responsibility for his own actions here, and he returns to what his purpose was. He returns to what his philosophy was. Where I have a gift, I have a duty. Where as Spider-Man reminds him, you have intelligence is a gift, or is a gift and a privilege. Where you have to channel your gift into saving mankind, which is what Spider-Man does, and kind of channel the whole sacrifice message of the movie, where Doc Ock gives the ultimate sacrifice here, where he dies. But again, that last line will always haunt me. That and the whole Butterfingers in the lighter sense of things, but in the dramatic sense of things, Alfred Molina is one of the best lines. I will not die a monster. He takes control of the arms, and he drowns the sun in there. And again, it's his dying moments. It's just, oh my. Such a beautiful moment, such a beautiful fitting end to that character. But yes, I'm so sad to see Doc. I can't call it a con because it makes the story kind of perfect. Where I don't want Doc Ock to die, but again, with the story they're telling, he kind of has to. But it complements the story so beautifully, and that character arc. It's a flawless ending to the Doc Ock story. I love it.
All right, so with that in mind, we will get to final thoughts. I guess I'll go first. So yeah, I mean, just definitively looking back on this movie, my main question was, does it really hold up? Because I've seen this movie probably like 30, 40 times, and that's being probably a little bit conservative with that number. But with a movie that you've seen that much, it's inevitable that you kind of put it on the shelf for a while, right? So I haven't actually revisited this movie in whole in quite a while, and just, having said that, absolutely it holds up. This movie is just like, it's a greatest of all time for a reason, man. If Spider-Man set the blueprint, this absolutely perfected the blueprint. I mean, it's almost staggering to me how perfect this movie is. I mean, are there some corny bits to it? Yeah, but this movie is all about embracing the corny side of Spider-Man and the dramatic side of Spider-Man, and it all just blends together so seamlessly. I mean, it's absolutely one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. No question does it deserve that title.
There's barely a thing that doesn't pay off in this movie.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to throw it to, let's see, I'm going to throw it to Jacob now.
This movie, as I said before, this movie is definitely one that stands out. I mean, as you said, Tiki, this movie is considered one of the greatest of all time for a reason. I mean, it's probably now probably the second best or the second or third best Spider-Man movie ever made. I mean, I think the current best one is still Spider-Verse.
I'll agree to that. I do think the best one is Spider-Verse.
That's good. I mean, Spider-Verse is going to be a tough one to beat, and for the longest time, this was for the longest time, this one was a tough one to beat.
Yeah. And that just goes to show anyone who's kind of like, oh, you just have your nostalgia goggles on because you don't like Spider-Man Homecoming as much as this one. I'm like, no, I don't like Spider-Man Homecoming as much as this one because Spider-Man Homecoming is a good but not great movie. Spider-Verse is a masterpiece. Anyways,
basically this movie stands the test of time for many reasons. I mean, it's definitely if there's any a top 10 superhero genre, this would definitely be up there in the upper echelons of the genre. I mean, as you said, this is arguably the best in the Raimi trilogy for many good reasons. I mean, as you have, it has people said there are hiccups in there. I mean, then again, no movie and there's such a thing as a flawless movie, and this movie isn't an exception to that. But this is one of as far as Spider-Man movies goes, this is almost borderline a flawless Spider-Man movies. It captures almost all the nuances and essences of Spider-Man. Basically builds up on what made the original great, makes it even greater. Basically gives an interesting villain who can be threatening, funny, and also tragic at the same time. Tying thematically into Spider-Man himself. Basically can't get. Basically, it's hard to top a movie like this. I mean, there'll be a reason why this film will be remembered for a long time among the other movies in the trilogy, is because it's arguably the best, at least one of the best live action Spider-Mans ever. I mean, we're talking about it. People still talk about it to this day, and there's a reason for that. And we'll be forever grateful for the fact that this movie even exists.
All right, Reagan, go for it.
All right, for me, Raimi cracked the code on this one. Put simply, Raimi cracked the code. He channels. This movie channels the hook of Spider-Man as a character. It's even better than the first one. It has it has a compelling villain, spectacular action, and pathos for days. If we're being honest, it does. It's pathos for days. This, again, look, it may have a blemish or two, but again, emphasis on just literally mainly just two. Really, if you really want to boil it down, it's barely anything. Blemish or two, but even look. That said, in perspective, I want to keep things in perspective here, folks. Even the Spider-Man films of today, the more recent Spider-Man releases like Spider-Man: Homecoming, Spider-Verse. I mean, they're even with those films. I mean, they're great, or with those films, I mean, they're great or debatably better than as they might be to this. I mean, as those films, an argument could be made. Again, I would say Spider-Verse is the main argument. Homecoming, in terms of if you're just making a story per story comparison, I mean, in terms what, again, in terms the power loss thing versus Homecoming, again, it maybe not be as appealing as Spider-Verse, obviously, but still might have a succinct, sort of a tighter narrative in certain senses. But again, regardless, however you come down any of those movies, again, Spider-Verse or Homecoming or just Spider-Verse for simplicity's sake, as great as those movies are, and debatably better as those movies might be, this movie is an iconic titan. It's nothing can really touch the iconic status of this movie. It's because it's a rewatchable delight. It's an example of the finest pre-MCU that still holds a candle to some of their great works today. Some of the great works, not even just in the MCU and outside the MCU. Some of the great works within the genre today. You know, it stands strong. Even if like there's new Spider-Man stuff coming out, there's always going to be considerations. Always going to be like a patronage applied to Spider-Man 2, where it's just a place of honor there, where it's like it is, but is it as great as Spider-Man 2? You know, it's like it's up there on the pedestal where it belongs. As I've said before, you know, Spider-Man changed the game. It, you know, devised the blueprint, changed the game. This movie changed the game within its own franchise. It changed the game on changing the game. It's pretty impressive. Just there's a lot of love towards Spider-Man 2. A lot of, again, the way we love the Superman movies, I think is a lot of love you can apply to this of the Spider-Man films. This one especially, Spider-Man 2, not strongest entry within the trilogy, and just one of the strongest within the tomes of superhero-dom.
All right, take us out, Sandy.
Well, guys, I love the first Spider-Man movie. That will always be my favorite. But Spider-Man 2 is just, it's like Dragon said, you know, it's this gem of a movie. I mean, it has its own unique shine. It just glows for miles on end, and this movie is never going to go anywhere, and no one's going to forget this. This without doubt, we can all see why this has gone down as just one of the best superhero movies and one of the best sequels in cinematic history. The casting is perfect. The effects were just stunning. The writing was great. The character building was phenomenal. Like Dragon said, there were a few blemishes here and there, but it's just, again, it reminds us that this is, again, it's an imperfect movie. While it is perfect in more ways than just a handful, it is still imperfect, and it's I don't know. It's just its own unique thing. It's really wonderful. There's not much else I can say that would really go without me repeating myself. So I'll stop here.
All right, thank you guys so much for joining us. We're all on a high. We're all feeling super positive about the Raimi movies. We're all thinking, oh man, like these movies are so good. They're so
How could it get any better?
Yeah. It's like, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
But you know what? We're gonna approach the third movie with a positive attitude, regardless.
Well, I am to a certain extent. I'm approaching my rewatch where I'm like, all right, you know, let's see what good merits come out of this one.
Spider-Man in the black suit. What could possibly go wrong?
I'll be a defender of it.
As will I probably.
I mean, I'm not saying it's a terrible movie, but I think we can all agree it's a big step down from the first two.
It's a myriad of something. I'll tell you that.
So
Definitely the weakest link.
It's a big step up from the Mark Webb movies.
yeah, I'll agree to that. I will agree to that. That's for sure. Regardless, sometimes the biggest train wrecks make for the most interesting podcast, so I look forward to that. That one will be happening actually more towards the end of the month, folks. More towards the, I believe, the end of next week or something like that. Either the end of next week or the beginning of the following week. We'll have to schedule that out. But you know, we're gonna time it a little bit closer to Far From Home. But in the meantime, folks, speaking of Far From Home and the international qualities of Spider-Man and how Spider-Man is such a universally beloved character.
Spider-Man does whatever